is Sewing is My Superpower, and for this one you only need to know 2 stitches, backstitch and satin stitch. And we will be using the sort of crazy paving satin stitch where you're mixing it up with long and short stitches to essentially colour in large areas. So the first thing that you need to do really is to take a 3-thread black floss, and I'm going to demonstrate on the lettering on Superpower, but the same thing goes for the smaller lettering for the Sewing is My. You'll see on Superpower where the lettering goes to make the shadow, it makes a very steep 45-degree angle. For your shading satin stitch, you will be shading it at that same angle to really reinforce the shaded nature of the design. So I'm going to come up there at the beginning of the S and then go back in down, and again we're just making parallel stitches all the way along that cover over the shading, but absolutely parallel, absolutely at the same angle. You don't want it to go sort of wiggly and veer off. It's sometimes helpful to do a number of sort of starting stitches so that you know that you are parallel and at the same angle, because it's very easy to just sort of veer off slightly. So if you start by picking out a few stitches at the right angle like that, at the start and the end, you're then better placed to be able to work your way back and fill in the shaded area on the letter as you go. So pull it out and then poke it back in again. So you've basically coloured in the whole of that shading area, and keep going till you have done the whole lot. And you repeat that on all of the other lettering and on the shading of Sewing is My Superpower too. Sewing is My Superpower. That's the way you do all of the shading there. Once you've done all your shading on all of your letters, you can pick out the outline of the lettering using backstitch, which will also help to just plug any tiny gaps that you might have in your embroidery, and you'll see that it just starts to really lift the lettering. I'm using a single thread floss here. You don't need any more, because what you want is to try and keep the stitching feeling light, the actual lettering to feel quite light. And I'm just back stitching along this bottom of the S first, because that's where I've started the shading. And obviously by the time you get to doing the back stitching, all of the shading will be done, and you'll just be picking out the letter, and you'll see how quickly it starts to make the lettering come to life. And you keep going, just keep going all the way around. Now, the thing to remember here is that you don't want to do this back stitching until right at the very end. So shade all your letters and then do the shading in the lightning strike, and then you backstitch like this right at the very end. I'll show you the shading in the lightning strike in just a second. I just wanted to get to the end of there, and you can start to see how that really lifts the letter out and brings some definition. So I'm just going to show you the satin stitch shading for the lightning strike. The yellow colour is the front and the orange colour is the back. I'm going to start with the yellow, and you should too. Now the main thing to remember with this is that as with the shading stitching on the lettering, you want your stitches to be parallel as they can be. So pick a line and stick with it. In this case, I'm going to pick this outside line of the lightning strike and work my stitches parallel to that, and then where they break into this line, I will keep them parallel to that and just use the shading to end at that line. So I'm starting in the top corner, and you can afford to use quite long stitches here. I'm going up next to that one, and I'm just going to do a short one. You have to do short ones at the end because you want to keep them, you don't want them to be in one long black block of the same, so it's best to alternate long and short and medium sized. I'm just coming up here at the top of the end just to show you what we can do when you hit a letter. So I'm using that to meet parallel with to join up to that second stitch I made, and then I'm coming back in again and joining up with the first stitch I made, and then I'll come out next to that one again and make a little short one, and maybe come up at the top here and make a longer one that comes back down. And really that is how you go. You just work your way along any areas that you see that need shading in, and be sure not to interfere with your lettering. And from the view of not interfering with lettering, it's quite sensible to work your way round the lettering shapes first and foremost, so that you know where your shading stitching needs to end, and then you can sort of absent-mindedly just colour it all in with parallel stitches. So I've got that folded up. I've got that two folded up. I'm just going to so I'm just, you can see now that that is starting to colour in. Once you've coloured in the whole area like that, and the whole of the yellow zone is coloured in and the whole of your orange zone is coloured in, you can then pick out again the outline using your back stitch, which will give the lightning strike shape total definition, but that comes at the end, and part of that is so that where your stitches may be slightly uneven, the back stitch helps to give you a clear and sharp line there. So you would back stitch around both shapes, an orange back stitch here and down here and down here, and obviously leaving the letter so that the lettering is in front, and then and again all the way around, and then the yellow one, because the yellow lightning strike is on the top, the yellow lightning strike is outlined as much as you can see here, and the only place where I wouldn't outline it is here, where you can clearly see the line, but actually it makes sense to keep that as black shadow, and it gives you a better sense of the lettering popping forward. So that is basically how you complete that particular design. Use the photo guide in conjunction with this video, as that will also explain things for you if you get stuck.